Hey guys, welcome back. Today I'm doing a bit of setup work and I thought I'd switch the camera on because I've got a couple of bases here that have the same little problem. Right now outside it's maybe 38 degrees. I don't know how many Fahrenheits that is, maybe 100. We've had extremely hot and dry weather in Australia this summer. You might have heard about the terrible bushfires in many parts of my country. Actually, I'll put a link in the description, and if you can spare $1 or $2, the Red Cross Disaster Relief will certainly put that to good use, I'm sure. Having said that, the weather here in Melbourne can famously turn on a dime, and tomorrow I believe it's only going to be 17 and raining. And when you get weather that's swinging around so much, you really need to keep an eye on your axes because you start to see little problems that are caused by the timber expanding and contracting so much. Both of these bases have press fit type Machinehead bushings that are starting to lift. And if you don't get on top of it, the tuners will wear unevenly and I guess prematurely. You'll feel kind of notchiness as you turn the key, and the instrument won't really hold its tuning. And because the Machinehead post is kind of leaning forward slightly, the gears are slightly out of alignment and they'll wear out quite rapidly as well. So the first thing I want to do, well, I want to check a couple of things. Firstly, I want to check that these are tight. Oh, and they're not. That's not. Yeah, these are barely finger tight. These screws that hold the gears onto the string post, these loosen off over time. The first thing I'm going to do is just put a drop of Loctite on these. And really it's literally a single drop. That's really all you need. In fact, that's possibly too much, but really that's all you need. Especially with a modern machine head, they're not going to come apart too easily. And I personally like to put them back in by hand. That way I can really feel them. You don't need a whole lot of torque on them. You just want to cinch them up a little tighter than finger tight. So I'll go ahead and finish these up. Next thing I'm going to do is actually, because I'll be removing these, I'm actually going to mark up each one, simply because I want to put them back in exactly the same place. So it's still relatively, moderately tight, I suppose, but we really want to lock it down in place. And there's a couple of ways you could do that. It needs to be glued in place realistically. They were never designed to be glued, so I'd recommend against using polyurethane glue or epoxy or anything like that because it will bond to the metal and you'll never get them out if you ever had to, say, put a hip shot in here or whatever, or if the machine head got damaged and you had to replace it, you'll never get it out. So really what you want is a glue that just fills the gap. Something like Titebond's ideal. This is still relatively tight, so another option is actually just floating a bit of super glue in from behind. Oh, okay, well, there you go, it's out. Now, wood glue might seem a strange choice for this because it's obviously not going to bond to the metal, but as I mentioned, that's sort of not, well, that's not really what you want. You want to be able to remove these if you can. Really, the glue is just filling the gap that's opened up between the bushing and the timber. The other nice thing about Titebond is that it's water-based, so it's very easy to clean up with a damp rag if you ever had to. That's probably way too much. So honestly, you just need a nice, just a very thin smear. Let me line this up. And that'll just press home with the fingers. Yeah, I don't even really need to clamp that, to be honest. I'll just let it sit there for a few hours. Make sure there's no squeeze out underneath. So what I will do when I put these back in, I'm just going to put a tiny smear of glue of grease on these string posts. Not sure if the camera can see it, but even with a relatively new instrument, there's already just a little bit of scoring on here from the bushings. I'm honestly not really sure why manufacturers don't lubricate these when they install them, but I've never seen any grease on there. There might be some very good reason for it, and let me know. But I've always lubricated those string posts. Just imagine all of the string tension is jamming the post and the bushing together. And I think with a bit of lubricant, these are less likely to pop out as well. You can see, honestly, just the tiniest smear of just multi-purpose grease. And much of that will be cleaned up as well. Okay, let's look at this old fender. So it's got hip shot machine heads. They've obviously been replaced at some stage. Looks like the bushings are original though. With an instrument like this, it's probably best to remove all the bushings and glue them back in, because they'll probably all come loose eventually. In fact, yeah, I can get my fingernail under there, the U-string, so that's starting to happen already. So these two and this one are already coming up, so I may as well remove them all. But I'll do the first job again. Yeah, these are loose. Yeah, they're not much. Yeah, they're really loose. Okay, so I'll Loctite those. Okay, so to remove these, you need to really drift them out from behind. So you've got to find something tubular that's the right diameter. So let me look through my stuff and I'll see what I can find. Alright, I've got this box wrench that is just about the right size. It's about 14.5 mil. So there we go. So I haven't glued these yet, but for what it's worth, there's a few different ways you can press them back in. If you've got a weighted bag like this, this is full of little lead pellets, like from shotgun you buy at a gun shop. Then you can put that there, and then either use like a soft face mallet or a piece of scrap timber and tap them in. Personally, I would only do that if I had no other option. I just would prefer to press them in with a bit more control. And you can do that in a couple of ways if you're sort of in a DIY type situation. One is to put this by the edge of your bench, protected underneath, perhaps with some masking tape or some rags or a piece of this sort of material, and then again use a piece of scrap timber like that, and then just use a G-clamp to draw it in. But honestly, it's a lot easier if you actually have a vise, and that's what I'll use for this sort of job. So this is a metal vise, and as a precaution I've put a couple of layers of masking tape on its jaws, and I've also put a scrap of veneer on the back, and an extra layer or two over the top of the headstock as well, because it'll be kind of resting like that. So it's just a matter of putting a little bit of glue on. These are still, these aren't that loose. started by hand. And then I'll just press that home. Now these are all pressed in, just have to make sure there's no excess glue squeezed out behind there or around the face. These are fine. Occasionally you'll get a bushing that's so loose that it kind of rattles in its hole there. Happens with vintage instruments occasionally. If that's the case, I'll also put a smear of glue around the inside of the hole on the timber. And I'll also put the machine head back, the original machine head back in its place while that glue is drying, just so I make sure that the bushing is sort of concentric and aligned with the string post. If the bushing doesn't sit flush with the face of the headstock while the machine head's pushed back in, then you need to get a piece of scrap timber, drill a hole, preferably with a drill press, to the same diameter of the string post. And then you can put that over the top and apply just a little clamping pressure just to keep it flush while that glue is curing. So thanks for watching. I'll see you next time. I think I'm going to go to the beach.